I asked two producers to give me one tip that they think intermediates and beginners should adapt and add into their music production, and here they are. Hopping straight in with the first one, it comes from Sam Mkhize himself, and he said beginners and intermediates should learn the very basics of music production before they hop into anything major. This is the bare minimum on how to make sounds and what you can do. Once you understand this, and once you can master the 3x oscillator, you can then move on to understanding bigger plugins like Serum or Sylenth or even Diva. So hopping straight in, I'm just going to show you guys how this works. So you've got 3 oscillators, 1, 2, and 3. On the left and the right, you've got a whole bunch of knobs. If you wanted to know what each knob does, all you have to do is look on the top left of the screen and hover your mouse over it, and it'll explain to you exactly what that button does. So all in all, the buttons on the right are the volume buttons. So I'm just going to turn number 2 and number 3 off, so we're left with number 1. I'm just going to play you the sound and see what it sounds like. On the left hand side, you can choose what type of wave you want it to be. After that, we've got the pitch offset and the detune. I wouldn't mess around with these unless you are well known with what they do. Moving on to the next thing, we have the pitch, which will basically just be how you want the sound to be. So let's just say it's going to tell you how low you want the sound to be. So let's just choose a sine wave and we put it at the lowest. And we have a really deep sounding kind of bass line almost. Then on top of that, let's put a saw wave and let's bring it up a little bit. Let's see how this sounds. There you go. That's basically all you have right there. Then the next step of what you have to do is you have to go into the cogwheel, and then to shape the sound, all you have to do is go into the ADSR tab, and you've got the delay, attack, hold, decay, sustain, and release. For those of you that are aware of this, it is the ADSR. So we're going to put the envelope on, put the attack at 0. We'll basically put everything at 0, and we're going to start to shape the sound. So essentially, we have nothing. So let's start with the decay. So we're going for like a nice plucky sound. Let's add some sustain in there and add some hold. And then let's bump up the release a little bit so it adds like a bit of a tail. Next thing what I want to do is I want to go over to the filter tab, go on to low pass, and then bring it down a bit. And that's your basic baseline, I guess. It's as simple as it can be. It is what it is. You can then go and mess around with adding like maybe another one. And then, yeah, you can maybe detune it a little bit. That sounds pretty cool. Then another thing that you can do is play around with the LFOs. So let's choose sine wave, and then we'll change the AMT, add it up a little bit. So basically 3x oscillator is really battered upon, but it really isn't that bad of a plugin. I mean, there's not a lot of plugins that's going to give you this type of LFO feature. Yeah, you can just mess around. What I would do is just literally just mess around, touch all the buttons and find out what they do. And then you can hop into the more advanced stuff like Serum, Sylenth, because if you can master 3x oscillator, you can basically move on and take the knowledge that you know and the knowledge that you have and just put it straight into Serum, Sylenth, or whatever, and you're going to be making sounds that are 20, 30 times better than what you would ever imagine yourself making. Alright, so tip number 2 is a bit of a weird one, but this one comes from Roommush, and he basically told me that whenever he produces, he always makes sure that he has socks and shoes on in the studio, because to him, that when he's not wearing shoes, when he's wearing like flip-flops or whatever, he feels like his mind isn't in the right space to be producing and working. So for those of you that have a bedroom studio or have a studio that's like right next to your room, put on some socks and shoes. It'll make sure that your mind is in the right space to be producing and to be working. So the third and final tip that I have for you guys is understanding how to layer your drums properly. And this tip comes from me and myself and I. Let's hop straight into it. I don't want to waste time. So layering drums, it comes down to how you want the track to sound. So I'm going to play you the final draft of what this track kind of sounds like, and then we can work from there. Cool. So understanding how to layer drums is basically as simple as it can be. You don't have to always do it. There are tracks where I literally have one kick, one clap, one hi-hat per sound group. I'm not always trying to layer my drums. It's not always a good thing. But there are some times where I want my tracks to be a certain way. And let's hop into it right here. I've got clap number 1 and clap number 2 laid on top of each other in this area right here. Let's hop into it. We've got clap number 2. Not a lot of high end coming out of this clap. Whereas the corresponding clap number 1, a lot more high end coming in. Both of the claps do sound completely different. One clap is giving me a high frequency type of click, and the other clap is giving me a low frequency type of punch. So layered on top of each other, they give a thicker sounding clap in general. So what I did for this was I just had the 2 separate claps and linked them into the group over here. So the way you're going to do that, if I'll do it over here, is if you have these 2 tracks, you will just send them to number 42. So let me just group this up here so you can see where I'm working. So I wanted to send 41 and 42, 40 and 41 into channel 42. What I'd have to do is link it like this and then deactivate it from the master. And now these 2 channels will be sending into channel 42. And then this will be your master fader for those 2 channels. And that's how it kind of would work. If you wanted to group things up like that, it is as simple as can be. And the same thing with my hi-hats. So I've got 2 different hi-hats. Number 1 sounds like this, whereas the other one more in the middle. So understanding how to layer your drums is as simple as kind of understanding the audio field. So if you have one hi-hat sitting dead on in the middle of the track, you can essentially add another hi-hat that is a lot wider, and it'll just cover up that whole spectrum, and it'll just allow the sound to come forward in the mix. The same way that you might have a hi-hat that is very like clicky, it'll be like a tss, 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 very clicky, very high end, and then you might have a hi-hat that is a little bit more of a lower, like a ch, ch, and you could layer both of those sounds on top of each other, and they could sound a little bit tighter. So I'm going to play you the clap sounds alone. I'm going to take one out, and then you're going to kind of hear how thin the sound gets. Same thing with the hi-hats. I'm going to take all of them out, and then you're going to kind of hear that the sound field just gets a little bit thin. And that is kind of the process of layering your instruments. Plus, another thing that I want to add on that no one really tells you about, when you are layering your hi-hats, what you can do essentially is offset one of them. So what you can do is, as you can see over here, this is one of my layered hi-hats, and if I zoom into the second one of each of these, it's a little bit off the grid. What this will do is it'll trick the ear into thinking it's not robotic, into thinking it's a little bit more groovy. And you can do that. Essentially what I'd normally do is I'd make it on number 2 and number 4, or I would make it on number 4 alone, where I would just offset it slightly. And this is not a lot, it's just one click off the grid. Just adds a bit of a groove in. The same with the open hats that I had. It is, some of them are one click off. It's not in this channel, but it will be somewhere in this track. I made one of the patterns, the 4th one was one click off, and that is essentially understanding the audio field. If you want to layer something, it can't clash. Don't layer a hi-hat that is a lot of high frequency with another hi-hat that is a lot of high frequency. What I'd normally do if I was layering drums was I'd have a clap sitting dead on in the middle, and I have a clap sitting in like the stereo field spread out quite a lot. The same thing happens with the hi-hats. I would have one hi-hat dead on in the middle and one hi-hat spread out into the audio field. It just gives the track a little bit more of a groove, and it gives it more of a feel, allows you to spread it out a little bit more. So yeah, I'll play you this track as it is with everything in it, and you can kind of hear that I'll take out the instruments and you'll hear it just become really thin.